Prison murder caught on camera. That's what I'm going to be talking about in this episode, people. Now, this happened in Hmp Fosseway in August 2024. Now, Hmp Fosseway is a Category C prison which was opened in 2023. So only 1 year later, there was a murder inside the prison. Now, Hmp Fosseway was opened up as a state-of-the-art prison, which was more supposedly supposed to be like a resettlement prison, a prison where prisoners can be rehabilitated. This is a place where a lot of prisoners would primarily be rehabilitated, ready to be released back into society. But one prisoner was ultimately lost his life inside of there. Another prisoner was handed a life sentence. Another one, 11-year sentence for manslaughter. And luckily for the third defendant, he got a not guilty on this. So as I said, this happened in August 2024, when 19-year-old Ashiri Smith, 21-year-old Thierry Robinson entered the cell of 31-year-old Mahir Abdul Rahman. So on that fateful morning, they entered his cell after the screws unlocked the pads. Literally less than a minute after the screws unlocked the pad, these two individuals entered the pad and began attacking the individual. They beat him so ferociously that he did end up losing his life. I did cover this when it happened at the time, last year in August, when 6 inmates were initially locked up for this murder. But like it says, murder caught on camera. I'll show you the footage now of when they were laughing and joking before and after the murder had actually took place. So as you can see, the defendants have entered the cell, and only the one, which was 19-year-old Ashiri Smith, was sentenced to murder, or found guilty on murder, and then just been sentenced last week. So when they've entered the pad, the two of them have begun attacking him. Obviously, the one that's been found guilty of murder has the one that's inflicted the most blows, or the one that's inflicted the fatal blow. Now, the other person that was on trial, who got a not guilty, he's obviously been given evidence against the other two defendants. But as you can see, or it didn't show him entering the pad or entering Mahir's cell on the CCTV. But what did happen, the reason why there were 6 people locked up altogether, because after the attack took place, half an hour after the murder, some other inmates, the other ones that were arrested and charged, who were arrested but weren't charged with the murder and didn't go to trial, they all got questioned, and they've give evidence stating that they entered the cell because a lot of the inmates were walking backwards and forwards past the cell, looking inside to see whether or not he was responsive. Some of them had actually went in and chucked water on him to see whether or not he would jolt, with the cold water on him to see whether or not he was alive. And that was why the rest of them were actually arrested as well. But obviously they've given their story, and I'd imagine they've all turned King's evidence on these two. Because these two were seen on camera going into the cell first, this is how the case has been built up against these two. And then they had the third person who was charged with the murder, who's obviously was overheard on the phone talking about what these two had actually done. But going back to why this actually took place, Mahi Abdul Rahman, who had been in this country for a number of years, was serving a sentence for an S assault. He was actually what we class as in prison as a bacon. Bacon bonce rhymes with nonce. That's what a bacon is inside of prison, and that's exactly what this prisoner was. So these are the inmates were taunting the victim who has been murdered. They were taunting him on the wing, and he retaliated by throwing hot water at them. What they were doing, they were going up to his cell door, which happens in all the prisons. These were going up and taunting the bacon inside of his pad, giving him a load of grief because of what he was in prison for. He's an S offender. What the prisoners and what the rest of society looks at as vermin. Everybody looks upon these type of offenders as vermin, the ones that do the sickest and most depraved things to little ones. So not only outside of prison, when the general public do not like these type of offenders, when these get put in prison in Hmp Fosseway, they are mixed in. So these lads have been going up and griefing them behind his door, and he has actually had boiling water waiting for them coming to the door, and he's actually squirted them or swilled them with the hot water and actually burnt one of them. This was on the night before the murder took place. So obviously they've had their plan hatched up. As soon as his door opens in the morning, they are going inside and they are going to attack him and get retribution for getting the hot water chucked at them. So this is what's happened. As soon as the door has become opened in the morning, he has probably not even getting out of bed, because a lot of people inside a prison, the first time they awake is when the screws come round and open the doors up for either breakfast or for the showers or to get out for exercise association or for the workshops. So as soon as they've opened the door, these two have went in his pad. It did say around about 37 seconds after the screw had left the landing. And it did say obviously all of this was pre-planned and premeditated, because when they've watched footage previously, the leading up to this, over the coming days leading up to the murder, these two individuals are walking around the wing with their flip-flops on, as a lot of prisoners do. You get flip-flops for when you go inside the showers. And when these have come out on the morning of the attack, they've actually had, even though they've got dressing gowns on still, they've had their trainers on, laced up, ready for what was about to take place. So this was another mitigating factor used against them, saying that they went prepared to use their feet. I was going to say use violence, which they did. They were prepared to use violence, and they were prepared to use their feet as weapons, which it was proven that they did. So that was a mitigating factor as why they got found guilty as well. One of them was found not guilty for murder, but guilty on manslaughter, and he was sentenced. Thierry Robinson was sentenced to 11 years in prison, whilst Ashiri Smith was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 17 and a half years. Now, this is what I let a lot of the people watching this channel know about as well. People say, or prisoners have come out and said, prison is nothing but a holiday camp. Now, the prisoners that have been in serving a few months here and there, more so the ones that go in and just get off their heads, don't even know they've been in prison, come out and say it's a holiday camp. Look at this for an example. One prisoner has lost his life. Another prisoner has been sentenced to life imprisonment, who has technically now lost his life. He was in there serving a short sentence. a 19-year-old lad serving a short sentence. He's now serving a life sentence. His life is over. He'll be spending a considerable amount of time in prison, probably at least 20 years. But then when he comes out, he's on life license. Any small thing or altercation, he's back in serving that life sentence. This is going to be his life forever now, in and out of prison, unless he rehabilitates himself whilst he's in, moves away from his area when he gets out, and starts up a new life for himself, which doesn't happen very often. But that's what could happen for him in the future. But again, like I've just reiterated, his life is now over, or as much as it is for the next 20 years. Because being in prison for 20 years is no laughing matter. And like I've said, another prisoner has lost his life, even though a lot of people will be watching this. As I've read in comments about these type of prisoners getting murdered inside a prison, You'll see for yourself by the comment section what they will say about these type of inmates being murdered in prison. But people come on and say a prison is a holiday camp. Is that a holiday camp? That you can go into prison, you can lose your life? Or you could end up serving a life sentence because this so easily happens inside a prison. They're in there, they become friends with a few different lads, all like-minded lads. They all get a bit above the cell, gang mentality. They set about another inmate, the other inmate dies. They probably didn't have in their mind that they were going to end his life. They were going in there to inflict serious harm. Yes, obviously, it's blatant to see. But I don't think they would have been going in there thinking that they were going to end his life, because if that's what they were going to do, they would have been in there with tied up bed sheets. They would have tied him up. They would have made sure that he was left in a state where there was no coming back from. Obviously, when they've used the hands and the feet, they might not have been wanting to go to the extent of him losing his life. They were just in there to make a statement. And obviously, he's lost his life. And this is the repercussions of the aftermath. And all these other lads that have been involved as well, their life will be, if they have turned king's evidence, which is a grass, if they've ended up grassing inside a prison, then they're going to end up on the numbers. They'll be getting tortured, and their life will be a living hell inside a prison. So there we go. I thought I would bring you that story, not just give you the story, but give you the rundown about what happens inside a prison and how these altercations can spiral out of control. If that bacon wasn't on the wing in the first place with normal prisoners, then it wouldn't have happened. But that prison is meant to be a rehabilitation prison, so prisoners to turn their lives around and come out and stay out. But obviously it hasn't happened in this case. But I'll leave that one there for now, people. Hopefully you are enjoying the content. And as usual, keep watching. There's plenty more to come. Hit the like button, comment and subscribe. Take care, everyone.